Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're watching. Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon, a retired NYPD detective with 20 plus years of law enforcement. And if you like all things true crime related from a police perspective, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you will get all things DutyRon when I go live or when I upload another video. I want to say a special thank you to my channel members, my Patreon supporters, and the moderators, and everyone who subscribes in this community. What I believe to be one of the best true crime, respectful communities out there. Hello, Joey Brooklyn, Matt Sully, Cat HRDNAC. Good to see you, Debbie. Thank you so much. Marie, Dawn Marie is here. Marie is here. Linda Hanson, Black Rose 11. Great to see everyone. Seattle Crime Gal is in the building. Great to see you. Thank you for joining. Guys, if you haven't yet shared out this video, please take a moment to share out the video. Mimi J2 is here. Minabot is in the building. Galenda Popsel, thank you so much for being a channel member. Hello to everybody joining. We'll get into a roll call in a few minutes. Parm Dari, thank you so much. June DeCarlo, I love the names. I love it. Memorial Day weekend, we give thanks and praise, and we remember all those who gave their lives protecting our freedoms. Freedom doesn't come free. So I salute all of veterans and all the folks who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country and for our freedoms. Great to see everyone piling in. Hello, M. Keegan. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. I did see Brenda Redmond, who is a great friend. Granny Sue, thank you so much for being a channel member. So me, how are you? Guys, let me know in the chat before we go any further by pressing a 1 if the audio on this microphone is good for you. If I need to pump up the volume, dance, I will do that. Let me know quickly in the chat before we get going. We're going to get into Lori Daybell Shallow tonight and her being deemed mentally unfit to stand trial on concealment of evidence charges and murder first degree. Let me know if we're good with the sound. Okay, let me know we're good with the sound. I've got a bunch of number ones. I have one person that says I'm a little low. Maybe try pumping up your volume on your end because I'm getting a lot of ones in there, but I will, in the best judgment of making everyone happy, is I just pumped it up just a little bit. All right, Dawn Marie says, let's roll. So we're going to roll. Let's roll some video. I have a very special guest waiting in the green room. He is a very big fan favorite of this show. He is a criminal defense attorney, Joe Murray. I'm not bringing him on at this second, but I'm letting all the folks out there know we have our criminal defense correspondent, Joe Murray. He is, again, going to chime in here tonight for the next hour or so with me to give you a criminal defense attorney's side of Lori Daybell Vallow, and I'm honored to have him here. But let's listen to a little bit of media before we go any further. Let's see. I don't have Josh here with me tonight, so I'm a little bit challenged when it comes to, you know what. But let's play it. Let's play the B-roll. Ready, guys? Bam.
Father now formally charged with murdering her two children, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, in court by Zoom today, nearly 2 years after 7-year-old Joshua Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan disappeared. NBC Digital breaking news reporter Alicia Fieldstadt joins us now. Alicia, these charges coming almost a year after the children's remains were found on Daybell's property. What can you tell us here? Why now?
Hi, Allison. Thanks for having me. That's a great question. Prosecutors said yesterday that they were only recently allowed to convene a grand jury due to COVID-19 restrictions in the courts. So this has been a lengthy process. Tylee and Joshua, or JJ as he was known, were last seen alive at different points of September 2019. JJ, who was adopted by Vallow and had special needs, was last seen at his Idaho school. His grandparents asked police to check on him in late November after he had been missing for more than 2 months. Police got different stories from different people, but Vallow's late brother notably strangely told police that JJ was with his grandparents, the very ones who had reported him missing. So the next month, Vallow and Daybell fled to Hawaii, where authorities eventually caught up with them and charged Vallow with desertion of her children. They arrested her then. Daybell was detained a year after last year after the bodies of the children were found on his property.
So, Alicia, Chad Daybell was also charged with first-degree murder in the death of his former wife, Tammy Daybell. What do you know about her murder?
So Tammy Daybell was a school librarian. She died in October of 2019, just weeks before Daybell and Vallow were married. Her obit said she died in her sleep of natural causes, but her body was exhumed in December of last year as part of this longer investigation. And yesterday's indictments revealed that the autopsy determined her death was in fact a homicide.
Investigators say that the couple may have studied doomsday religious beliefs. What can you tell us there?
So Chad Daybell has authored more than 24 books about near-death and doomsday events, and multiple people close to Vallow, including her ex-husband, have raised alarms about her doomsday beliefs over the years. In the indictments released yesterday, prosecutors said that the couple, quote, did endorse and espouse religious beliefs for the purpose of encouraging and or justifying the homicides of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. One notable specific detail that they gave in those indictments said that Daybell and Vallow had exchanged text messages saying that they believed that Tammy was in limbo, quote, and possessed by a spirit named Viola.
Okay, I want to stop that just for a second. For those of you who are following this closely, first of all, Trudy_astrologer, that's Trudy with the booty. Thank you for becoming a channel member. Much love and respect. But for those of you who are following this closely, Charles Vallow went to the Chandler Police Department in Arizona and said his wife, Lori Vallow at the time, told him that he too was possessed and was a demon, and that she was going, or her God or her church person was going to kill him within the next day or two. And I'll play that that video as well. You'll hear her husband, Charles Vallow, tell the police, a female police officer and a male police officer, that he was in fear for his life. And his wife told him that she was going to kill him. And sure enough, she did, through her brother, Alex Cox, who then mysteriously died himself a day after they recovered the two children from Chad's pet cemetery on his property. And it's funny that Tylee also got the actual dubbing of a demon by her own mother because she witnessed Alex, her brother, kill her first husband. Or was it her second? Who the hell knows? You lose track after a while. So everybody that witnessed or could incriminate them in their doomsday religious killing spree become themselves killed and become a victim. So it's kind of funny. Things that make you go, right?
It's quite a story indeed. Alicia Fieldstad, thanks so much for.
So that's what we have from a little bit of media. Let me bring on my guest because I know he's a fan favorite. He's a retired NYPD police officer. He would have, in my eyes, been a first grade detective. He has some great skills on observations, and he is a tremendous criminal defense attorney. He has his own website. He ran for Queens County District Attorney in 2019. My good friend Joe Murray, thank you so much for joining. Joe, you just got to unmute yourself.
Gotcha.
Thank you so much for joining. Good to see you. Happy Friday night, Joe.
Same to you. Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, man, it's always a pleasure. Joe, what a roller coaster ride with Tammy Daybell Vallow. This woman, again, I know that, from a defense side, but we're talking man to man here, like a killing machine. It's almost like a lawnmower. Don't get in her way,
Yeah, pretty scary. The conduct is shocking, but this mental illness I think it's going to be a factor. Even if there was a insanity defense, it's still a high bar. It's not just, a simple finding that she believes in this zombie land and church, this doomsday thing. That's not enough. And
Yeah.
if you look at the overt acts that she's charged with, you're seeing her cognitive abilities to change the Social Security benefits from one bank to another. The insanity defense, which doesn't exist in Idaho, but generally it's whether or not you can appreciate the nature and consequences of your conduct. You know what you're doing essentially, and that what you're doing is illegal. That's a very high bar. And you see in these conspiracy charges, let me just look at the overt acts. I was just looking at it again. Some of these are pretty telling, and I think it's smart for the prosecutor to charge that. It says on or about November 26, 2019, Lori Noreen Vallow provided a false and or misleading physical location of JJ Vallow to law enforcement during a lawful investigation. So what they're essentially saying is she lied about his location intentionally. Why? Because she knew that if she told the truth where he was, that would get her in trouble. So the fact that she was aware that if I told the truth about where he was, I'd be in trouble,
Hmm.
negates the insanity defense, even with all the stuff that she's believing in, this zombie stuff, because she's showing through that overt act that she's concealing her criminal conduct from the police. She knows what she did is wrong. So stuff like that, when you look for, after we heard about that, I started looking in the indictment for issues like that. So text messages, this is in count number 5. Count 5, subparagraph 6, text messages between Chad Guy Daybell and Noreen Vallow about Tammy Daybell being in limbo and Tammy being possessed by a spirit named Viola. Here again, this is that top charge where they put in there that they espouse this religious belief. That's their motive. They're putting this in there to show their motive.
Right.
And then these overt acts are just showing, what they're doing
Hey,
and how
Joe,
they know what they're doing is wrong.
right. Before I forget, Joe, because I'm old, I'm an old man. My mind sometimes goes all over the place, but as I have it in my mind here, isn't this almost like an MO for Lori and Chad? He writes numerous books, as we just heard in the media clip I played, right? His
Right.
books are all centered around the end of the world, and it's
Yes.
centered around, this doomsday fortune kind of theme. But all of the folks who have come up deceased, including Charles Vallow, he makes the statements. I'm going to pull that up in a few minutes, where he tells the police department in Chandler, Arizona, "I'm in fear of my life. My wife told me that she's going to kill me in the next 2 days." Of course,
Yeah.
it didn't happen in those next 2 days, but it did eventually happen. Um, will the prosecution, or are they capable of taking some of the things like that happened in Arizona, not to charge it obviously where they are, but to use it as her modus operandi? In other words, she
Absolutely.
said that she told her best friend that her daughter was a devil and a demon and she needed to be eliminated. The husband, Charles, and Tammy, now she was in limbo. It's the same concept, no?
Exactly. And I think that's what they're going to do. The prosecution's going to first lay out the foundation of this religion and what it espouses and his doomsday theories, and what is the remedy and what are they supposed to do in preparation, or how could they avoid it. Use the text of that religious belief that he has and espouses, and just lay that out, and now match it up with his conduct, him
Right.
and Lori. Match it up with their conduct, so there's your motive and there's your actus reus, the actual performance in the furtherance of committing whatever crimes associated to that religion.
Right. I'm gonna queue up, if you can bear with me a second here. I'm gonna queue up Charles Vallow. This is from January 31st, 2019, and this is the police body cam footage outside of the police department in a parking lot. So for those of you who are just joining, this is going to be footage 2019 of Charles Vallow making a complaint to the police department that his wife is unhinged and lost her mind.
So is she in there?
What's going on? Why is she here and you're not here, or are you staying here with her?
Long story. She had kind of a drug personality. She thinks you're LDS?
Yes.
She thinks she's married to Morona in the past.
You think she's what?
It's Morona at the top of the temple.
Angel, LDS.
They don't let me in
She's
there.
probation, and she knows when the second coming is happening next year, so does a prophet.
Okay.
He's saying that she thinks she's a prophet. Joe, can you mute your mic? Can you just mute it?
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
Just mute it because I got a little background noise. This is hard for everybody to hear because it's from police body cam. This female officer actually was like very leery of his story, so she asked him to repeat it. The male officer was there and he was like, "What? What did you say?" So I'm gonna roll it back for a second.
He knows that she knows she.
You're not here, or are you? What's going on? Why is she here and you're not here, or are you staying here with her?
Long story. She's had kind of a drug personality. She thinks you're LDS?
Yes.
She thinks she's married to Morona in the past. This is her
You think she's what?
We're married to Morona at the top of the temple.
Angel, LDS.
Yeah, she thinks she's. I think she's saying he's saying she thinks she's married to the angel on the top of the temple or something like that.
Yes.
They don't let me in there.
Probation, and she knows when the second coming is happening next year, so does a prophet.
Okay.
He knows that she knows about it. She meets with Morona and Jesus Christ face to face in the temple every day. I've tried to support her as much as I could, but it's gotten really, really bad lately. She's had a break. She says, "I'm Nick Schneider. I've taken over Charles's body, and Charles has been killed. I'm going to kill you. You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow. I can do it. I'm not going to my priest with my power. She does priesthood blessings. She does, and Charles has been killed lately. She's had a break. She says, "I'm Nick Schneider. I've taken over Charles's body."
He's telling her that she's telling him that she's Nick Schneider and has taken over Charles's body, and that that she's going to kill him in the next day or two, or someone from the churches. So this is disturbing in itself.
And Charles has been killed. I'm going to kill you. You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow. I can do it. I'm not going to my priesthood with my power. She does priesthood blessings. She does.
So who's Nick Schneider? Okay.
That's who I'm supposed to do.
Okay. Right. Okay. So he's not at church. He's not.
She took my truck from the airport. So thanks, she took my truck from the airport last night when I flew in. She canceled my flights. I had to buy a ticket to come back home. I've got a 6-year-old with special needs.
Right. And he stays at school somewhere.
Right.
Okay.
For now. If she knows I'm here, she's going to go get it.
Okay. What?
He's saying, I have a 6-year-old with special needs. We all know who he's referring to there.
Car, what is she driving?
A black Infiniti QX80.
And you've looked all through the parking lots? Okay. All right.
Do you have the license plate on that?
It's KDM 62 or 63 or 67. It's handicapped. Okay?
Nothing in the pin. There it is.
And I don't know where she put my truck. She took $35,000 in cash out of that account yesterday. Sent me payroll. I mean, I just never thought she would do anything like this, but she's just lost touch with me. I'm not me. She yells. She's unhinged. It's scared the crap out of me.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming you guys have phones. Is that an iPhone?
Yes.
Are you able to track to see where her phone is right now?
The
I
phone's
hear
right here with me.
iPhones.
The phone's with me.
Oh, your phone. Now, how did you get her phone?
Because it was in the car this morning when she pulled up to school. I took the keys out of her purse out so she couldn't leave. That's when I called you guys.
Okay.
Somehow she has a face like keys and left with my dog. And so I don't know where I saw this in her purse. I don't think she's here. They were going to give me a key to the room. I was going to go, if you guys will come with me, see if she's in there.
We can't just go in. If you're not allowed to go in, we can't either. We can
So on my credit card, she gives me that.
Okay, that's going to be up to them if they allow you to go
Sure.
in. Now, we can't. Now, you guys are
You guys
married,
wait
so
here?
there shouldn't be. No, we're waiting for right now. What we're doing is my sergeant wanted to get.
Okay.
Okay, so we can take her. So
Tell me again.
Okay.
63,
Something like this.
67, DM.
KDM
KDM.
62. It's KDM something.
KDM 62,
Yeah.
63,
Something like this.
67.
Handicap plate.
Handicap.
Yes.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you.
Is
for
it
the super
registered
chat.
to you?
Yes.
Grab that key out of her purse. We'll all meet right there.
All right, so you guys get the idea. Let's come back, Joe. You guys get the idea. This is a husband that is really in fear of his life at that point. We all know what happened. He decided to try to work it out with Lori. You're still muted, Joe, by the way. He decided to try to work it out with Lori. They went through therapy, or she went through some type of therapy, and he tried to get back or have the marriage work. And it was against the best judgment of his family, his personal family, because I've spoken to some folks on his side, um, and they were all like dead against it. And he, love sort of some kinds wins all, and we make stupid decisions. This one turned out to be a fatal decision of getting or trying to get back together with her, and we all know the end result. But Joe, this just shows again, the reason I played it was just to show that this is going on since 20. I believe in some of the videos and some interviews I heard since 2017. She was talking crazy about this doomsday and the end of the world and the coming of Christ and all of this craziness. So again, when I spoke about extreme religion and people who are in any religion, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, if you're Islamic, if you're, any type of extremism with religion is dangerous. And I feel that a combination of mental illness and extreme beliefs have a play here. What's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Absolutely. I mean, it's clear that from what we see so far that she is acting pursuant to whatever this doctrine of the Church of Latter-day Saints, I believe that's the church.
Yep.
She's acting pursuant to this doctrine there about doomsday and the apocalypse, and she's committing these crimes in the furtherance of that religion. It's right in the indictment that this is what they believe. But it's going to be interesting to watch because the Constitution allows for, at least they don't allow the insanity defense, but your mental impairment can negate your intent. Now, I'll give you an example. Let's just take somebody who, let's just say a Vietnam veteran or any war veteran who comes back and has flashbacks. In their sleep, unconsciously, they act out and do something, perhaps even just take a knife and stab somebody subconsciously, where they're not stabbing me, Joe Murray. They think they're stabbing the enemy. That can negate the intent. If that's so delusional and so disconnected, that can negate the intent. But here, I don't think that's the case. I think she knew this is, her son and daughter, but she's under this belief that they're demons. But if you know who they are and you're killing them, I don't see how that's going to negate the intent.
Yeah. What's your take on her attorney coming forward? I know it's part of it's part of like that code. In other words, if you're a criminal defense attorney and you have a client and you do a whatever trial or appearance interview with them, like you have your time, like I know how this goes, corrections will let you have your time with them, your client, to talk to them. If they're not making sense, is it the moral obligation of the defense attorney to report that, or is this something that perhaps Lori's attorney said, hey, listen, I think it's a good idea if you say that you're crazy, this might help you? Let the people know. And I'm asking this question because I got this question on my website from many ladies and gentlemen. It, how does that work, Joe? Did her
It's a
attorney
good question.
do that?
It's definitely a good question, but I'll just explain it to you this way. Do you know what I had to go through to get my law license? I am not risking my law license by telling a client to commit some kind of fraud on the court. We are bound by ethical rules about perpetrating the fraud against the court. Even if if I know my client is lying, if that client testifies falsely and I know about it, I have to tell the court. I have to reveal it to the court. So, we're not allowed to permit our clients to perpetrate a fraud on the court if we know, and we certainly can't facilitate it or participate in it or encourage it. And there's nothing that important about winning that case that would affect my license and why, I wouldn't jeopardize it. So to think that an attorney would do that, uh, I doubt it, highly doubt it. I think the attorney actually, just looking at the videos that you showed, that's not manifested from the attorney. That's been there.
Right.
So I think he witnessed that and tried to talk to her. And perhaps she started talking about demons that are floating around the room. And he said, wait a minute, time out.
Yeah.
I think we got to do a little competency check here, because, the purpose of the competency is, as an attorney, I always say to my clients, we have a partnership. You bring the facts, I bring the law, and together we put our defense together. Now, if a client cannot meaningfully participate in our defense by bringing the facts, giving me the information, there's a breakdown. And I can't competently represent the client who can't facilitate or contribute to our defense.
Or
So I have an
comprehend
obligation to tell the court that.
or comprehend it, right? If your
Yeah.
client can't comprehend what's being conveyed by the court, what's being conveyed by yourself, by the defense attorney, then it's impossible to go forward because you need
Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah. So thank you for answering that question, Joe. If you don't mind, I'd like to go to the chat quickly just to see what's
Sure.
happening and say hello to a couple of folks. You got a lot of fans here on DutyRon. On Crime Time with DutyRon,
Love it.
Joe, you are a fan favorite, AKA the Silver Fox. So
Love it.
that is your new nickname, Silver Fox. And I think that's coming from the ladies, Joe.
All right.
All respectful. So tell your better half to understand this is part of the fame and fortune that comes with the family. So the Joy Catcher, who's a good friend, Lucretia, says, thanks for helping me understand, because this can be confusing for me at times. Hey, Lucretia, I'm going to tell you, the Joy Catcher, thank you for being a channel member and also for your question or your comment. It's confusing to many here. Listen, because I'm a law enforcement professional, Joe as well has seen both sides of this coin, from the police side, from the actual being being in the system side, and also now fighting for the rights of his clients. But we could tell you that my wife or my next door neighbor who's a plumber, he wouldn't know jack about this. Most of us do not come in contact with the criminal justice system over the course of our entire lives. So when you see and you're jumping in the pool, so to speak, this is like jumping in the fire. Actually, this is a very complex case. You have two defendants with multiple murders. You have potentials for up to um, uh, six victims.
Murders.
Yeah, Yeah, we have potentially 6 victims here along the way, and God only knows how many sacrifices or animals, and who knows what these people were up to. But I could tell you
Mhm.
this, as an outsider looking in, and as a former investigator, I could tell you that the pot is overflowing. The kettle is overflowing here with evidence, with potential modus operandi. I mean, these people were, and we're going to hear more about Chad Daybell. I mean, he's no choir boy here. Okay. So Lisa D comes in with a $5 super chat. She is also a channel member. She says, Ron, you're not too bad yourself, but we all know Mrs. DutyRon has the looks in the family. I say this to you, Lisa D. You are 1000% right. And my kids are handsome young men because of my wife. So thank you, Mrs. DutyRon. I appreciate that comment and the super chat. Um, so I'm just trying to look to see if there's any comments in the chat or any questions for. And this is Joe Murray, retired New York City police officer and now criminal defense attorney. I'm going to try to twist Joe's arm for the next live stream to change this Joe Murray criminal to from retired NYPD to criminal defense attorney. I'm going to try to
Sure.
twist his arm to get him to change that just for maybe one show, because I know Joe is a proud retired New York City police officer as well. I wonder if she will flip on Chad, says Pauline. What do you think? What do you think about that? You think she'll try to flip on Chad and say he was behind all of this and he twisted her mind?
That's going to depend on the prosecutors, and it's going to depend on how strong they feel with their case. Now, I pointed out just a hunch on my observation of the indictment. They were both indicted for the 2 kids, but then when it came to Tammy, only Chad was indicted for the murder, but they were both indicted for the conspiracy. I find that as a problem for the prosecution, where the grand jury, maybe they presented it for both, but the grand jury said, this is an overstep, prosecutor. So I think the strength of their case is stronger against Chad, and I think maybe people would be more sympathetic to Lori because of the conduct. The grand jury got to hear evidence, they got to see evidence, hear evidence, and I think that was the grand jury saying in count number 6, no, we're not doing it. Because if you look at the language, it's pretty clear they're talking about more than one person. They're actually charging Chad with aiding and abetting.
Right.
You
And
know?
then they also mentioned her deceased brother, Alex Cox,
Yeah.
in it as well.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a quick question for you. There's questions and there's a whole flurry of inquiries or conversations about Mark Means. That's Lori Daybell Shallow's defense attorney. He's never tried a murder case, and he's never. I think he's maybe handled one felony case, if that. How
Wow.
is
That's
this guy?
shocking.
How is this guy going to be able to competently represent Lori Daybell in a twisted, case like this? He's got no experience. Never was, never handled. Never had a client charged with murder, and I think never even handled a felony case. How does that go?
That's pretty shocking. And as a prosecutor, if that's true, the prosecution has an obligation to protect their case. Now, they don't want to try this case twice. So if they notice there's some kind of defect or some kind of problem or even a conflict in representation that could be overturned on appeal, they're going to take action, to remedy that. So if that's true, and I don't know if that's true, I think the prosecutor will inquire. I don't see how he got on the case. Was he private attorney?
I I believe. I mean, I believe so, because she was
Hmm.
initially represented by a court appointed, and when she was extradited
I will
from
say that usually in death penalty cases, you'll have more than one attorney.
yeah,
They'll assign a second person,
right. Look at Barry
to that.
Morphew. right? Barry Morphew's charged with first-degree murder and his wife's disappearance and now death over in Salida in Colorado,
Right.
and he has two females. We talked about that, me and you. We
Right.
did a live stream on that. So yeah, I mean, he doesn't seem like he would be a good fit for this. And again,
Mm,
like you said, nobody wants to have a retrial, and nobody
right.
wants to see her say, "Well, I was my defense was incompetent." Can they do that after the fact, Joe? Or-
Yes, ineffective assistance of counsel is a very common uh, issue brought up on appeal.
Mm,
And they'll look at, and the standard is, was it a trial strategy? The misstep, or maybe not calling a certain witness or not cross-examining someone on a certain issue, was it a trial strategy, or was it just a defect where
right,
the attorney made a mistake? So, but that's also another high bar. It used to be the foggy mirror test. Just stick a mirror under his nose. If it fogs, okay, he's a good lawyer.
right,
you
right.
know but but
I
uh
I read this in many articles. I read this, and I shook my head. Um, he's a civil attorney, and he's never handled a felony. So
Wow,
how could that
that's
be?
shocking.
But
I
you
got to
know,
tell you, as a former police officer myself, a criminal defense attorney, and I try cases. The first time I tried a case with a second attorney, and I did it just because of the size of this case and the material, it was a Social Security case. I had such a wonderful experience by having that second person. I don't ever want to try another case by myself. And I'll tell you, there's so many pros to it, very little cons. As long as you work well with that person. I'll give you an example. I may be digging in and arguing with the judge over an issue. I know I'm right. He knows I'm right, but he's not going to admit that and concede to me. So
hmm,
at that time where we're digging in with each other back and forth, arguing this issue, all of a sudden my partner steps in and says, "You know what, Your Honor, let me just try and put it in another light." Well, now he's not upset with him, he's upset with me.
right, right,
So he can concede to my partner, where it's so much harder for a judge to concede to me. Like, I couldn't believe it. We started doing that. And even with the prosecutor, arguing with the prosecutor over certain evidence that wasn't disclosed, or we should have had this earlier. And then, one, it's like good cop, bad cop.
right.
One guy comes in hard, then the other guy's like, "Hey, look, we can work this out. Why don't we do this? We do that."
Yeah, yeah,
It's such a valuable tool. So I can't imagine a death penalty case not having two attorneys for each defendant.
right,
Uh,
right.
so let's see how this thing proceeds. But right now, with the insanity issue, they're not going to entertain an insanity defense. It's going to have to be to negate the intent. But like I said, I was just looking for signs of, what they're going to try to prove. And concealing a criminal act is knowledge that what you did is wrong. So I was looking for stuff like that. So that could be an issue.
Yeah. I mean, I see so many problems, especially from her side. It looks like Chad Daybell has, a tight ship. His attorney is pretty spunky. Most of us can't stand him, but he really is. He blows Mark Means away, obviously with his experience. But I see definitely a problem, and they are talking about separating these cases and trying them separately. Now, again, as we know, Idaho is one of four states that does not accept the insanity defense.
Right.
So the chances are Lori will be, like you said, and you and I spoke about this on a sidebar council. She'll be sent for treatment, medicated, or regulated in some way. And I forgot the exact term that the court used, but she'll be brought back after she is. Geez, I
Fit.
forgot.
She's been rendered fit to stand trial.
Yeah, they used a different. We're talking about
Confident?
Idaho here. No, it
Yeah.
wasn't even something straightforward. It was. It wasn't even rehabbed. It was just
Restorative.
restored.
She's getting
That's yeah,
restorative
yeah,
treatment.
yeah. She was after upon completion of restorative treatment. So I heard that, and because again, I'm out of the game a little while, and I never heard that restored, but it sounded kind of mechanical, like she was going in for programming and coming back. But we get what they mean.
Oh,
Um,
sure. I mean, Ron, it could be as simple as she's not sleeping.
right,
She needs to be medicated. She
right,
needs to anti anxiety medication, something to
right.
just bring her back to focus, you
A
know?
little Zoloft, and then
There
send
you
her on her way back to
Yeah.
court. Yeah. So there's argument as well when someone gets put on psychotropic medication, if they are in fact able to actually comprehend what is going on. So there was conversations in small rooms and in small little chat areas amongst members of the criminal defense community and stuff like that. I was reading stuff. I get around and look around, and there was arguments being volleyed back and forth about medications and how lawyers can argue certain types of medications can deem somebody kind of like almost lethargic. I'm not sure if that's a good word for it, but
No, it is because that's part of the problem. You need your client to meaningfully contribute to the defense. And
right,
if they're just too sedated, you can't. You
yeah,
can't communicate. You can't function.
it makes me think of Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Where they got him good, and at the end, the
Yeah.
Indian guy saw him and knew that he was done. They did the cut in the back of his head, and he was just like
Yeah.
kind of. So that's what it made me think of. I know, that's a bit extreme here for an example, um,
But
but
those side effects are the issue. I mean, if the side effects are just too debilitating, it negates the whole purpose of it.
right, right. And thank you to everybody in the chat. I see a whole bunch of people here. Coco Chanel, Joey Brooklyn. Hey, we can't forget Joey Brooklyn. He is the director of security here. Spirit's Heart, thank you so much for being here. Oh, Billy Ryan is here. Ryan Investigative Group, thank you for being a channel member and hanging out here. He's also a fan favorite. I got to have him come back on again. Retired out of Arson and Explosion Squad, the bomb squad, for putting it in layman's terms. Princess Michelle is here. Hi, Princess Michelle. Always a pleasure to see you. Hello, and thank you for being in here. Hi, Katie. Great to see you. Let's do a roll call. Let's bang it out. We got 500 in the chat. Let's do a roll call. Bruce Davis is here. Thank you so much for joining. Let me know where you're watching, city, state, country, and we will say hello. And if you are not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Boston, Massachusetts is the first one I see. Hello from Houston, Texas. Love the great state of Texas. Sleeping Beauty, good to see you. Thank you. Southern Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yes. London, UK. Black Rose chiming in from California. Thank you for joining. 12 Step, thank you for the super love. Is Lori Daybell rendered fit enough to have chosen the attorney she has now or has had? I'll let Joe take that.
Yeah, that could be an issue. I mean, if she's incompetent to fully comprehend what's happening, how could she possibly choose her attorney? That's why I want to look into that to see if he was actually hired by her or if he was provided by
I
a
can I can answer that.
service.
She
Yeah.
was hired. She was hired by Chad Daybell. I mean, he was hired by Chad Daybell because in the beginning, when they were brought in, he wasn't charged. See, Joe, you might not know this, but I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you now. When she was first brought up on these charges with the initial, there were lower charges, unlawful disposal of remains, and it was even before that. She failed to produce the kids, and she was brought back
Mhm.
and extradited from Hawaii. Chad Daybell, like the freak that he is, sat in the audience when she was arraigned in all of her appearances, and he paid with his wife's, with his murdered wife's life
Yeah.
insurance policy.
Sure.
He retained this attorney for her.
Mm.
So this is the guy who he retained for her, and he's still on the case. So
Well, see, I have a problem with that. He's a co-defendant,
right,
and the conflict of interest, because he is the one paying, that it creates somewhat of a conflict for that attorney. The attorney acts a certain way, then he'll get paid and continue to get paid, or she'll
right,
get paid.
yeah,
But if not, and then sharing information too. I don't like that.
yeah. This doesn't sound good.
She
Again,
should have her own counsel of her choice, not his choice.
right.
But again, she may not have the capacity. Who asked that question? That's a great question.
Yeah,
Because
that was 12-step woman. She asked that question, and a
very
couple of
insightful.
yeah, and a couple of ladies also came in with some follow up. Here's one. I'll put it up on the screen. He was not provided. He was hired by Chad, just like what I said, and he represented both Chad and Lori. Means said he was representing Chad. Should he be charged? Mark Means said he was representing Chad. Should he be charged? I mean,
If he was representing both, I could say that right now. That's a conflict of interest.
I
He
don't,
can no
I,
longer represent either one,
would you think a
because
judge?
you're learning secrets
Yeah,
from your client. And
right,
if you're learning secrets about one client, so now you may have a crossroad. Do I have him testify about, burying the bodies, or do I have her, testify about something else?
right,
You have to be exclusively in the interest of your one client that you represent. You can't have competing interests. So if you represent both people and now there's a conflict where they could be going like this, who do
right.
you protect? Which one do you defend?
But Joe,
So that
if
excludes him from both people.
if that was in fact true and that was the case, would not the prosecutor and the judge step in there? So that makes me think that I don't
Absolutely.
I don't think that he represented both of them. I think that's a rumor that's circulating out there, because in the legal area, in the legal realm, this would not be allowed to go if the judge would listen. If someone in the chat is telling you that, okay, it's in the chat. I'm not saying that that person's making up a rumor or a story, but these rumors circulate on the internet, and I always call fake book out on this. If the lawyers if that her lawyer represented both her and Chad in this same case, it's almost an automatic that he would get excused. So I would say this, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, that is not true, because the judge and the prosecutor would not allow that to happen, not in such a high profile case like this.
Yeah, I think that would be something that they would inquire about. I mean, an attorney is supposed to be aware of his own conflicts, his or her own conflicts,
Right.
and make those decisions. That's what the Code of Professional Conduct requires. We're not supposed to engage in any representation where it presents a conflict. So it's your duty to do it. They may just be sitting back waiting to see if there is a conflict.
Right.
I mean, in theory, they could be so united in interest. Let's just say that, for in the extreme example that's not existing here, but let's just say they both had an alibi defense that they were in France when this happened. Couldn't
Right.
have possibly been them.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
there's no, cross, pointing fingers. So there's no conflict. They're both united in interest because they were somewhere with an alibi and they couldn't have participated.
Yeah.
So it's possible that you could represent both in that sense, but I don't see anyone allowing that to go forward
No.
here.
Yeah.
It is true too that where I've had this with gang cases and even like organized crime stuff, there are people who will pay for the defense, and there's something called shadow counsel, and there's that other competing interest where they want to know what the discovery is and what's happening, or they want to make sure somebody's not cooperating. Again, that comes down to the individual attorney. If that attorney recognizes a conflict or a problem, they have to recuse themselves and get out and let somebody else come in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's almost like common knowledge within the in the criminal defense attorney realm. I mean, like you said, Chad Daybell's attorney, Mr. Pryor, if that was in fact true, I mean, why waste your time even trying a case if you know that there's a conflict of interest where the attorney for the defendant number two, Lori Daybell, Shallow, it has been represented and Chad was represented by him. It just wouldn't. That is. I smell that. That's just the internet rumor. Let me
Mm.
just ask you quickly before I forget. Given the fact that Lori has had these crazy beliefs, this extreme beliefs, these documented crazy conversations going back to Chandler, Arizona, dating back to 2017, as late as 2017, family members have said that she was extreme in her religious beliefs. Um, like you said, this could come into play here as part of the defense. Once she gets a competent defense team, and I don't think that who's representing her now Mr. Means will be there much longer. I don't think we'll see him on the case. Although he made a statement, he was asked in let's play that. He was asked if intends to stay on, and he said yes. Um, could the judge say you're excused or no? The judge can't do that.
Well, again, if the judge is made aware of an obvious conflict, that that conversation will happen, but it's the attorney's duty and obligation. But if it becomes so obvious, like a prosecutor does not want to go through this again. They
Right.
want to preserve and protect their conviction and make sure they limit all possible appellate issues.
Right.
So we have to just see how it plays out. Like I said, I don't see how this could ever be allowed to go forward
Right.
after having represented both.
Yeah. And there's talk that since it's there's two counts or three counts of potentially murder first degree, but murder first degree is against her. I mean, based on this lawyer's lack of experience, could that be something that the judge and prosecutors get together and say, "Hey, listen, I mean, could they bully this guy off the case if the defendant still says she wants him, or
I don't think so. As long as that attorney obviously passed the bar and understands the law, it's not it's not really the court's purview to kick him off the case. He may offer assistance, by appointing someone else to help. But if that's her attorney of choice, unless he's making obvious mistakes
right?
that are reversible error, I don't think the judge is going to get involved in that.
Yeah, this is not a my cousin Vinny situation where Mr. Gambini comes in with a leather suit and is faking that he's a lawyer. I mean, this guy's got the credentials. Like you said,
Yeah,
he passed the bar.
yeah.
So, it is what it is. It's just for me extremely, extremely complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts, and there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. This competency evaluation, which was um, you know, brought up by her defense, and then the prosecution tried to argue it like, "Hey, this is bullcrap. They don't need it." The prosecution basically said, "Come on, what are you doing? You're just trying to delay here." He didn't say it in those words, but basically he was objecting to it. Uh,
Mhm.
but now, the judge, made a ruling and said, yes, we're gonna. So the state is now gonna get a psychiatrist, right? So
Mhm.
a doctor who's gonna do a full eval on her. Will she be like inpatient, or will this happen in the jail? I'm thinking that it's gonna be something where she's gonna have to be brought out to like a
They're usually done in the facility itself, for
what is it
psychiatric,
like
because there's no invasive surgical procedures needed to be done. It's just, you
an
know,
evaluation, an interview? Yeah.
yeah, interview, diagnostic, that way.
Hey, Joe,
So it's usually done in the jail.
Right, yeah, because all these jails have a psych ward or like a psychologist. But I would think that they'd want to get somebody with maybe a little bit more. Well, these guys or gals in the jail, they see a lot of volume when it comes to this because a lot of people do have these problems. What's your thoughts
Well, the
on?
defense should absolutely have their own expert to go in there and do their own assessment. It
Right.
shouldn't just rely on the state's doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, someone's bringing up, Jen is bringing up in the chat that she was declared indigent, right? She doesn't have any money.
Indigent, which, yeah, I mean, for a death penalty case, I don't know too many people who can afford everything that you need. Investigators, you need experts.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that comes into play. Mitigation experts, a lot of people doing a lot of work in this and processing.
Right.
The prosecutor's going to have their experts. You need to have competing experts, and usually, if you're declared indigent, you can apply for the state to pay for these experts, and they're on an approved list of people, and you can select off the list. So that's helpful that that person said that, because if she's been declared indigent, then the issue of counsel is not a problem. That she can have uh, conflict counsel come in and take over or oversee what's happening.
Yeah. What's your thoughts about what we spoke about briefly before we went live? Chandler Police Department has brought forward their case folder and all of their evidence in the Charles Vallow death that occurred over in Chandler. Um, it's up to the prosecutor's office to bring charges, and they're talking about conspiracy to commit murder. This is telling us again that they have sufficient evidence to potentially bring those charges forward, that she, uh, along with her brother, conjured up a plan. I'm trying to say this in layman's terms so people understand it. Lori Vallow, at that time, conjured up a plan with her brother to go over there and stage an attack. And this is the story. It's alleged that Charles Vallow came at Alex Cox with a bat and hit him in the back of the head. When I spoke to a couple of family members, they conveyed to me that Charles Vallow was not a violent guy and is not somebody who would just start a fight with somebody. So now for the police department to come forward after these charges, this blockbuster came out. Everybody waited for almost a year, right?
Mhm.
The kids were discovered in June, I think June 9th. Don't hold me to it for those of you who are statisticians that have it. Okay, the kids were recovered in June of 2020. Let me rephrase. Counsel, I'm going to rephrase that.
June
So
9th, I think. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's what I said. So I wasn't sure. This old brain of mine, damn it. But so June 9th. So almost a year. And now the charges come forward, blockbuster, and it's been said that, does the Chandler PD and the prosecutor in Arizona have egg on their face and they feel like, well, maybe now we should backpedal and start charging because the chances are she set him up and had him killed by her brother. And then when the brother started maybe talking and saying, "Hey, I'm going to tell," well, guess what? Now the brother's dead. Dead men tell no tales.
That's
And
right.
maybe her daughter, who witnessed it, that she deemed to be a demon, was ready to come forward and tell somebody, and she needed to be silenced. Hence the trip to the park.
Right.
So we could be looking at a twisted web of unbelievable behavior. And that's why it kills me. It gets me so angry when I get messages on DutyRon.com and people say to me, "DutyRon, you're a little too harsh when you talk about bugs crawling on them in jail, and I hope they don't have one good day, and I hope they rot in jail, and I hope they rot in hell." And I've even gone as far as saying, if there was a firing squad, I would pull the trigger and not even lose sleep over it. That's a bit extreme, but I've said that. I've been quoted as saying that. But people, some of the ladies and gents, give me some harsh feedback on that, and they're like, "Hey, you're being a little too harsh on them. They're innocent until proven guilty." Yes, yes, I get that, but the behavior and the pattern that these two, by the way, this is a DutyRon pen. You want to get a DutyRon pen? Send me a message. It says subscribe to DutyRon. Oh my! But the pattern that they displayed, Joe, what's your thoughts on that? How difficult is that going to be to defend?
Well, I think it's very wise for them to collaborate and bring these charges because it'll further negate any attempt to declare her mentally unfit, not mentally unfit, but unaware of what she was doing or he was doing, because you're showing all of this planning and concealment and covering their tracks. People who are insane don't do that. They don't understand what they're doing is even criminal.
Right.
But people who are covering their tracks and burying bodies with no markers on them, like that, you're trying to conceal your actions. That's a problem. So I think the more that they can bring that to light, the stronger the prosecutor's case will be. I do have to say, though, I do. This is not a robbery. I mean, I understand there was money taken. There was the insurance money and the Social Security money, but to kill your own kids, the brother. I mean, this is. I do believe this is mental illness. So I'm having trouble with this. If I was defending it, I would preserve the constitutional challenge here because there's only 4 states in the country. Let me just tell you about death penalty doctrine. The Eighth Amendment, it's the shortest amendment we have. And it essentially is, for cruel and unusual punishment, excessive fines and stuff like that. We have in this country the Eighth Amendment doctrine. The way the Supreme Court looks at it in a large way is they look at the 50 states as a whole and try to see what the consensus is. So in 1972, when the court struck down, for all intents and purposes, ended the death penalty, they waited. And 4 years later, it was Furman v. Georgia. And then Greggs v. Georgia, 4 years later, the court allowed the death penalty to go forward. And what they said is, in the 4 years that we struck down the death penalty in Furman, 35 states reenacted death penalty statutes that conform to our decision, because the reason why they struck it down is because it was just so arbitrary and capricious. There was no real process going through. Now you see with death penalty cases, there's the trial phase, then there's a sentencing phase, and they have to have aggravating factors. It was just so random, and they found that an insignificant amount compared to the ones that could have been death eligible were being selected, and it seemed like there were always minorities who were being selected in death penalty cases. Said, no good, we're not allowing it. So 35 of the 50 states reenacted death penalty statutes that conformed to the rules the court put in Furman. So the court looked at that and said, wow, there's a consensus amongst this country that death penalty is appropriate. We do support it in our society. And the standard they use, it's called the Evolving Standards of Decency, that mark the progress of a civilized society. And they look at that and say, all right, at some point in the death penalty, they said, you know what? I think it was 2005. We're no longer going to execute children who commit crimes. And they were saying anyone under 18 years of age who's committed a death penalty offense, they used to get the death penalty. But then they look at a consensus across the country and said, you know what? Out of the 28 states or whatever that allowed it, they haven't done it in like 20 years. So the consensus was there. We're going to abolish this. We're no longer going to execute kids that commit death penalty offenses. And that was gone. So if you look at their jurisprudence and they base it on our evolving standards of decency, what we think is appropriate. They also, in Ford v. Wainwright, abolished the death penalty for people who are insane. You cannot execute somebody. You can, as we discuss, you can restore them to a sane or competent standard, but you're not allowed to execute somebody who's insane, whether they were insane at the time of the crime or just now at the time of sentencing or the execution of sentencing. So the court looks at things, and I think now that Idaho is only one of 4 states, they're in such a minority. I think if this ends up being a death sentence, that a good lawyer preserving that objection, bringing it up to the court will look at it and say, at this point in our Eighth Amendment litigation and doctrine, our evolving standards of decency call for us not to execute people who are insane, or at the time, to allow an insanity defense, not to convict someone of a capital offense who has a mental defect like that. So I think that's something that a good defense team will do, preserve that so they can go up on that to the high court.
Yeah. A very good point brought up there. And so many of these cases, you look at, what comes into play, and a lot of the times mental illness comes into play here. So again, somebody that doesn't have the right mental capacity to put them basically to put them to sleep is is I would feel inhumane. But listen, I'm a Catholic, and my aunt is a Catholic nun, and she came to me when I was a police officer and asked me to sign the anti-death declaration. I didn't sign it, but she basically, that declaration that my aunt, which is a Catholic nun, she's a Sister of Mercy, basically stated if I was killed as a New York City police officer, that I would not let Governor Pataki institute the death penalty. And she went to my brother, who's retired lieutenant, and he didn't sign it. But I was respectful about it. But it just goes against everything. And I feel that a few people have said this to me, and I feel myself. Life in prison is, I think, more of um, it's more of like time for people to reflect on what they've been accused of, and it gives them more time to think about their wrongs and actually not be in very good. Prison isn't a good place to be. You're told when to take a shower, when to eat, when to get up, when to move, when not to move. Everything is controlled. So for someone who's narcissistic or controlling or a danger to society, and these folks who are convicted of murder first degree are an extreme danger to society. As we know, these two are killing machines. So at the end of the day, for them to sit in a 8x8 or 8x10 cell, or share it with another person, to have to smell the smells that are inside the jails, there's no private bathrooms, and everything is intertwined. It's really not what these two are used to being around. The accommodations are not great. I think it's better punishment in the long term. Now, other people look at the argument of that they're getting to breathe the air, read books, educate themselves, work out, through 3 square meals, healthcare, dental, vision. Everything is looked at for them. They're afforded everything that the people who they've taken their lives are not afforded. So that's where the death penalty folks come into play and say, no, I think they should fry. When you mutilate your child and then bury them in a pet cemetery, and you go to Hawaii and prance around like some prince and princess, it makes people question the mental capacity, Joe. And that's where the anger comes in here. And I get what you're saying, and I'm not, this is not in any way, shape, or form going against 100% what you're saying. But I have to bring this up. I would be very remiss if I didn't bring this up. They went to Hawaii and he was playing. I could put the picture up of him on the beach with the lei around his neck, and he was playing like a banjo or whatever the hell he was playing, and it was like this whole happy event when they killed, mutilated, and buried both of her children, and she was able to have very competent conversations with police and with people who questioned her at that time, and she wasn't exhibiting crazy behavior. She might have been exhibiting crazy behavior behind the scenes and we didn't know it, but when she was questioned or asked or talked to by friends, she was like, everything is fine. Everything is great, but where are your kids? So
But isn't that the essence of the insanity of this? What parent would not sacrifice their own life for their children?
yeah.
And here we have a woman who's sunning herself on the beach, cavalier, as if she did her kids a favor. She cast the demons out because that's her belief. The only way I can get rid of these demons is by killing their bodies, right?
Right.
If
Yeah.
she really believes that she's doing good for her kids, isn't that the essence of insanity? I mean, that is insane to think I'm killing my kids to release demons that are haunting them.
Yeah, it certainly is an element of mental health issues. That's for sure. I'm going to try to pull up a little bit of where is it? Where is it? Damn it. So I'm on eastidahonews.com. I wanted to pull up a picture. All right, here we go. I wanted to get this picture to show you. Did you ever see that photo of them on the beach, Joe? I'm going to play this because I think it's necessary. Hold on a second. This is Nate Eaton as he chased them in Hawaii, and asked them about what's going on with your kids. So let's watch this. Hold on a second. I got to go to this. This is unbelievable.
I'm Nate Eaton with EastIdahoNews.com in Kauai, where Chad and Lori Daybell were served with 2 search warrants just hours ago. Law enforcement officers from eastern Idaho, along with federal agents and the Kauai Police Department, pulled Lori and Chad over. They were driving a black SUV. They pulled into this resort where I am standing. They put Chad into one vehicle, Lori into another. That's when their vehicle was seized and they had no way to get home. We had a chance to ask them so many questions that need answers. Lori, Nate Eaton with East Idaho News. Can you tell me where your kids are? Where are your kids? No comment. No comment? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say? You're over here in Hawaii? Where are your children? Yeah, why don't you just give us a comment? Just tell us where they are. Chad, where are Lori's kids? What happened to Tammy, Chad? Can you tell us what happened to Tammy? Why have you guys been in Hawaii for so long? Listen, just what happened to Tammy?
Look at his face when he says what happened to Tammy. He raises his eyebrows. Watch his reaction here.
Chad, can you tell us what happened to Tammy, Chad? Can you tell us what happened to Tammy? Why have you guys been in Hawaii for so long?
She was dead.
Listen, just tell people what's happening. There's people around the country praying for your children, praying for you guys. Why don't you give us answers?
That's great.
That's great. There's people around the country praying for your children. Why don't you tell us where they are? Why don't you give us answers? Well, that's great.
Praying for your children, praying for you guys. Why don't you give us answers?
That's great.
That's great. That's great that they're praying for you, praying for your kids. What? You have nothing to say? Did you do something to your children? Are your children still alive? That's a simple question. I've got 3 kids of my own. I can tell you every minute where my kids are at. Where are your children?
And at this point, they knew they were dead.
What do you guys plan to do now? Are you have 5 days to get your children in front of a judge in Rexburg, then what? Are you guys innocent of any crimes? Have you committed any crimes? Chad, you guys have a lot to say on your podcast. You don't have anything to say now? Lori? Do you believe that you were instructed by God or others to do something for your children? If you could give a message to them, what would you say? Listen, if you just talk to us, we'll leave you alone.
Family's worried. Tammy's family's very worried.
Tammy's family's very worried. Lori, your mother, Kay, came out. Kay and Larry, they're offering a $20,000 reward for your children. And you're over here on the beach? This is your chance to tell your story.
I love this guy. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Holy shit. He's a go-getter, man. I would love to shake that guy's hand. I mean,
I'm still conflicted though, Ron. I gotta tell you, I mean, on one sense, if she really believed she was doing something in their best interest by casting out these demons, then she would say it proudly, like she's doing nothing wrong. But the fact that she's not saying it and the fact that she's hiding it and concealing it is evidence that she knows it's wrong and I'll be punished for it. So it's kind of conflicting. I still believe that she killed these kids because she thought she was going to help them somehow. I mean, there's no other explanation that makes sense for the pittance of money that they made on the Social Security 5 months. I don't see it. But I hear your point, and I do see it in her conduct. She's not acting like someone who really thought there was nothing wrong with what she did. She's concealing it and hiding it. And that's evidence of she knows what she did was wrong.
The amazing part, Joe, was that when, like you said, when she was confronted there, the lack of anything that they showed, and they were already questioned by the police. Chad was in the back of a patrol car. Their rental was taken from them and taken in as evidence, and they were arrested shortly after that. Or she was arrested. I don't even know if he wasn't even arrested because he came to her hearing when she was extradited. So the extradition hearing, he was there sitting in the audience, and then when they were back in the States, he showed up in the courtroom. I mean, it's just bizarre behavior. I mean, we're going to have much more to talk about, Joe, but
yeah, without a doubt.
Really tonight I wanted to talk about this her being deemed not fit for trial or for the case to go forward. It's got a lot of people frustrated, man, and for good reason. I mean, everybody waited so long for these charges, and there were folks that said they were never going to come, they weren't going to charge them. There's always the naysayers. So kudos to the prosecutor and the prosecutor's office and the investigators, especially the investigators, because as you and I both know, to get this case, to get it to court, and to get it to a grand jury and an indictment, you need a good, solid investigation. You need good evidence. So I tip my cap to the FBI, the state, federal, local, everybody that was involved. And you saw them at the press conference. They were there at the press conference. So kudos to those men and women who worked countless tireless hours on this case to bring justice for Tylee and JJ and Tammy and Charles Vallow. And the fact of the matter is just because they don't have any charges against Lori right now before her husband, ex-husband Charles Vallow, it doesn't mean that that's not going to happen. But they get a conviction on even just one of these murder first degrees, on each one of these two, they're never going to see the light of day. And just correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been saying that. All right, we're going to go. Yeah, we're going to go over to the chat real quick because I know there's some questions. A couple of people asked, will the evaluation hearing and medical interviews, will they be recorded? I can answer that. No, because of HIPAA laws. They would not allow that. Correct, Joe?
Yeah, I don't know with COVID if they're doing these things virtual or not. So It's entirely possible. I don't want to say no, absolutely not, but
But would
this is
be
the world we live in right now.
but it wouldn't be available to the public to view a mental health evaluation.
Oh no, certainly not. That wouldn't be.
Yeah, that was the question. That was the question. Is that
Yeah.
will
I mean,
the
that part of it could be introduced at trial, but it would just be very limited to the specific intent of that charge, whatever, if they're going to raise that as a defect to her being not guilty, that she didn't have the ability to form the intent, they could raise that and introduce that at trial.
right,
But I don't see them releasing that pre-trial.
right? Dawn Marie, who's one of my top moderators and channel members, she said Lori will do whatever it takes to get out of prison. Listen, I think any human being would do whatever it takes to get out of prison because it's not a great place to be. So, you know, anybody will try to do whatever they can to get out of prison. Trust me on that. It's not a pleasant thing. It's not a pleasant place to be. The attorneys, it's part of their job to try to get their client either released on bail or get out. But in this case, with all these top charges, it's never going to happen. I mean, I mean, I would I would say with extreme certainty that these two are not going to be released on any type of supervised release, ankle bracelet, monitoring, all of the above, right, Joe?
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe because of the number of charges and homicides that we're talking about. I mean, I think more charges are coming.
Yeah. Yes. Hello, Carolyn Belrose. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Hello, Joey Brooklyn. Great to see you here or the whole live stream. Awesome. Anybody else have any questions before we wrap it up? And Joe, you're gonna have to come back. Now you're roped in. You can't go anywhere.
I gotta say, I love this though. To be honest with you, because now it's got me looking at the law and researching things and looking up. I actually did a death penalty case when I was in law school. One of the assignments we had was to take an actual case that represents or illustrates some of the doctrine that we learned and then do a paper about it. So I did my paper and then I mailed it to the defendant who was in Ohio at the time. And he wrote me back and said, I can't believe what you wrote. I've been trying to tell that to people for years and no one's listening to me. So I ended up participating with his defense team in his appeals. And it took a couple of years, but he lost all his appeals. And the last one was applying for clemency. By this time, I had already graduated. I was working at a law firm. But I got so into this that I actually contacted the detective, the homicide detective that had the case. And we had a couple of great conversations. This guy had over 500 homicides. He had 8 people on death row. And he goes, you know what? I'll tell you, counselor, he's the least person that should be getting the death penalty. And I'll be happy to help you. I'll even testify at the clemency hearing. So I was so happy to hear that. The team was all happy to hear that because he did have a pretty nice sized team of people helping him. And then I got a phone call. They were asking me to testify at the clemency hearing. I said, why? You have the detective. What am I going to do? He goes, no, he passed away. So I was like, holy mackerel. So I had to do an affidavit. I couldn't get to Ohio at that time. And he got clemency. He was the next person to be executed in Ohio. And it's just so weird because, God works in mysterious ways. This guy was next in line to be executed. And the guy before him, you may remember this, they injected him with the drugs to execute him. And he's sitting there and nothing happened. He picks his head up. He goes, I don't feel anything. So I think they penetrated his vein. It was just shooting into the muscle. It wasn't even in his bloodstream. It took like an hour or two to execute the guy. So they suspended all death executions in Ohio to review that. And it bought this guy some time, and then he got his clemency. It was just amazing. So, but I was studying it and I really knew the law. And now just talking about this with you, I started going back into these old cases, and it's all coming back. You know, it was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is fascinating to have that. And I did read about that where it was injected, and then we heard the
Yeah.
flip side, which was another incident that happened in, I believe it was in Nevada, and that was the last execution that took place in Nevada. It went wrong, and the defendant, who was suffered tremendously, and it was horrific to see and watch. And that was
Yeah.
it was a combination of a couple of different drugs, and it didn't go right. And that was the last execution on death row in the state of Nevada. But um, again, there's a lot of folks who are, for religious reasons and for moral reasons and ethical reasons, that are against it. But at the end of the day, it is going to be what it is, and I have a feeling that they're going to go. They're going to charge the death penalty. And
Do you think they're going to get the death penalty? Because I just want to tell you, just reading up on this, I looked at Idaho, and they've only had 3 executions since 1994. It was 1 in 94, 1 in 2011, 1 in 2012. And just by comparison, I was looking at other jurisdictions, and I found like Texas had, I believe it was 2000, from 2000 to 2010, there were 120 people executed.
yeah, they do the most. Texas does the most.
It's incredible.
Yeah, they fry a lot of people in Texas.
So do you think they'll actually see the death penalty?
I think they're going to go and try him under the death penalty, but the actual execution may take 15, 20 years, 10 years, who knows. But yeah, I do. And you know what? I know my aunt is going to see this and she's going to give me a lecture, but I want it. I want them to get the death penalty. I think that if anybody's deserving of it, I think the two of them are. And I get your argument and I understand it, but that's just my personal belief, And I have a platform like this, and I'm not gonna say something that I don't feel. Like, I'm not gonna tell you guys, hey, I'd like to see him life in prison. Definitely. So either way, I mean, either way, they're gonna get they're going to get the sentence, and then they're not going to be comfortable. But I would rather see him fried. Listen, it goes right to Kevin Gillespie, one of my fellow squad members, partner on the job, shot and killed in the line of duty. His perpetrators were Angel Diaz, was on death row and waiting. He didn't get sentenced, but he was awaiting to go to trial, and he was being held at Rikers, and he hung himself. But George Pataki took the Bronx district attorney and put Dennis Vacco, who was the attorney general, on that case, because the Bronx district attorney, God, I forgot his name, but
Johnson, he wouldn't pursue the death penalty,
and he refused to pursue the death penalty because he said it was against his religion, I believe, is what he said.
Mm-hmm.
My memory serves me correct. And he showed up at the funeral, and the family wasn't happy to have him there, and the cops weren't happy to have him there. But you're supposed to put your beliefs aside if you're a district attorney. Your religious beliefs, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that goes. I guess that's for a whole nother live stream. But
well, I gotta just say on that last point, from a prosecutor's standpoint, I would be worried seeking the death penalty on this, where a lot of people are going to see this as mental illness,
right?
Mental illness, and the progress we have being able to diagnose and treat mental illness is really at its apex right now. Like we have so much awareness and the drugs and everything that's going on, and people are attributing more to mental illness, I think a lot of jurors may not want to execute. I don't know what they have evidentiary wise, but I think that's something that's going to be in the back of a lot of people's heads about this. You
Yeah.
know, clearly they're delusional. They're
But but in the
believing in this.
but Joe, in this case, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I keep saying this because I know you know a lot more about the legal standpoints than I do. But if she's deemed fit for trial to go forward, can they still, in fact, say, well, she's mentally ill if
Oh, juries can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. When you get them in there in that closed room and they start deliberating, they're
Right.
gonna say, "Wow, this girl's whacked out of her head. We can't execute her." You know, I mean, if that's what
on paper, but on
they're
paper,
gonna be instructed as to what they should do, but juries do what they want to do, and I've seen bizarre stuff come out of juries.
so
But
Debbie Lyon says personality disorders, yes. Mental illness, I'm not buying it. Thank you for that comment, Debbie Lyons. Listen, this argument can go both ways, and I respect both sides. I respect what Joe's saying. I respect both sides of the aisle here. We are all going to be not quite on the same page. Some of us will, some of us won't. But that's a great thing about a conversation like this. You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
we can all get together and respectfully speak about this and have a forum where people aren't attacking each other based on your beliefs. So Linda Cormier from Canada, good night to you. Always a pleasure to have you here in the live stream. Kay Ellis says bipolar. Listen, again, we all have opinions on this. But at the end of the day, I want justice to be served, as we all do, for Tylee and JJ and Tammy, for Charles and all the unnamed uh, uh, victims here at the hands of these two folks, and for their families. So, again, I appreciate the time, Joe Murray. I'm going to link your website. I think I failed to do it on our last one, but I'm going to link it in the description
Okay.
tonight. Take care of both of these, I promise. Okay, and you get double pay tonight because it's 1 hour and 32 minutes. What's the scale? What's the scale, counsel, for an hour and 32? Do I owe you 500?
Oh, $5.50 an hour on this one. Yeah.
Shit, can I just make it an even 5? Can you give me a break?
Yeah. All right. I'll give you police discount.
You're a heck of a guy, Joe. Thanks for giving me a little bit of on the arm stuff. Joe, thank you so much. I hope you and your better half have a great Memorial Day weekend. We will come back and talk about this. I appreciate your time. You're definitely a fan favorite here. I'd have to say, if I continue to have you on, this might become the Joe Murray Show. So
I love this though. Come on, you kidding? This is so educational. It's wonderful, and any attorney will tell you. I mean, asking us, giving us a microphone or a platform, we'll talk all day long.
there you go. Yeah. Yep. Our good friend Scott Reich, who's got a great crime channel on here, has like 180,000 subscribers, and he's a Colorado criminal defense attorney, and he can talk. He goes on for quite a bit, but it's so interesting. It's so great to hear the knowledge that comes out. Hey, by a show of hands in the chat, by putting maybe a 1 in the chat or a hands up, who would love to see Joe Murray come back on and maybe be a regular guest once a week? I could do once a week with Joe Murray. I could do 4 days a week with Joe Murray.
Excellent.
Yeah. So by a show of hands, put a 1 in the chat if you want to see more of criminal defense attorney Joe Murray here on Crime Time with DutyRon. I'll let that roll, and then we'll wrap it up. Oof, there it goes. It's going crazy.
Oh, could you ask, because I'm dying to know, that show that I used to be on, The Perfect Murder. Are there any Perfect Murder fans out there? Because I love that show, not just because I was on it. We had so much fun with that.
I'm afraid to play a clip from it because I'll get a copyright strike. But yeah, anybody here see The Perfect Murder on the IQ network? If you didn't see it, could you do me a favor and go over there and watch it? Because Joe Murray has been on like 98 episodes of that.
It was on like 6 seasons, and I was on 5 of the seasons. But I'm only saying that because I don't know why they canceled it. It was doing so well. I
There we
think
go.
we were getting like 1.4 million views when the show would air, and they canceled it. I was like, wait a minute, I love this. This is my favorite job.
Andy Crayons, who's a channel member and a good friend of mine, says, I love that show in all capital letters.
See, it was a great show.
Yeah. And so
Thanks, Andy.
There's more people here. Ocean Sapphire says, perfect murder, exclamation.
Yeah.
And then American Meteorite fan says, that's who you are. I knew it. She knew you from something. Pam Nelson says, perfect murder. Yes. Wow. A lot of people. Moonlight Views has seen it.
Yeah, you know Rick Torelli and his partner Kevin Kaufman put that together, and you're going to recognize a lot of the guys on there. They were and gals. Yeah, Bill Cannon's on there. He was a regular.
Billy Cannon's on there.
Billy Cannon was on there. He was a regular.
Holy shit.
Irma Rivera, Bill Lyon, all these guys were on it.
Oh, I got to go watch. I'm going to binge watch that maybe tomorrow. We're supposed to have some crummy weather here, so maybe I'll binge watch The Perfect Murder on the IQ network. The
ID channel.
Right, the ID channel. Sorry.
I don't know if it's now playing on IQ, but it was the ID network.
ID. That's just me. I'm up. Anyways, thank you to everyone for being in here. And as I always like to end these things, God bless the world. God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us and all of our soldiers who have fallen in the line of duty, saving and protecting our freedoms and our Constitution, upholding all of the freedoms that we love and know and are near and dear to us. And a special prayer for all crime victims across the world and their families, from my house to yours and from Joe Murray's home to yours. Good night from New York City, and we'll speak to you on the next one. Thank you, Joe. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Good night.